Hello, everyone, and welcome to this virtual memorial for Michael Berensweg. So now we have Paula who's interested in talking.
Hello. Hi, Nancy. Hey, sweetie.
I love.
Nancy, that was just so eloquent. And I have to say, speaking of strange things, Nancy, you might be interested to know this. While you were talking, there was so many flickers of light around you, like little specks of white. And I don't know if it was the dust in your apartment catching light or what they say about spirits. If it was him, I mean, I think he was listening very keenly to you with a lot of approbation, of approval of how thoroughly and lovingly you spoke with him. I never, unfortunately, I feel regret that I never got to know Michael. I knew him indirectly, briefly, like I crossed paths with him on Facebook and we had some interchanges and I said, we have a common dear friend, Nancy. And I was very honored when he told Nancy that he liked something I said. And unfortunately, yes, there was a misunderstanding. He got a little through with something I said and started in with capital letters and hurt my feelings. So, but then interestingly, I befriended the Seckmans, Joseph and Jessica Seckman from the Universal Apostolic Church on Facebook. And I had read Food for the Gods years before, and I was just raving. That book just blew my mind. And I even have Rinberry's signature in it. I met Rinberry at some vegan event in Manhattan in the mid-2000s. I was just talking to anybody and everybody about that book. And what blew my mind was that Rin said that Jesus was essentially crucified for his stance on animal slaughter. And I was thinking, my goodness, if, like you say, millions of Christians who are just absolutely lost and buying into the corruptions of the original scriptures, it's just such a travesty. I mean, travesty isn't even the word. I mean, Jesus is besides himself. The divine is besides him or herself. Getting back to the Seckmans, so I had sent the Seckmans a copy of Food for the Gods, and they had done a little thank you into video on Facebook. Michael had seen it. And so Michael and I started talking again on the Seckman's website, Universal and Apostolic Church. And he had asked me, why is it that you chose this book in particular and this, that, and the other thing? We talked a little. And I was amenable to an olive branch, extending an olive branch and saying, let's just forget what happened in the past. And I don't know, maybe he got distracted and it never really went anywhere. But after that, like we would cross paths here and there again on Facebook and have a congenial this or that. And, you know, I listened to the vegan spirituality interview with him again just a couple of days ago. And what I was struck by was the most important thing in the world, which is his kindness. You could just see his kindness. That was the main thing. There's nothing higher that you can say about a person in this world. They were kind. And he's free. He's peace. He's free from whatever his body was, you know, our bodies betray us as we get older. Free and doesn't have to live. Probably hurt him very much what's going on with the pandemic. But I think that they gave him his angel wings right away. And that he's still working. He's still working to make it better wherever he is. But the flickers of white on the screen just blew my mind. I mean, I didn't see it on the other two, Thomas and the other Tom. The last, when you spoke a couple of minutes ago, Nancy, I didn't see it throughout your whole eulogy. It was like all over the place. And I'm not the only one who noticed it. Lisa noticed it too. That's all I have to say. Yeah.
Oh.
I regret not having gotten to know him better.
Well, thank you, Paula, for sharing from your heart and for your forgiveness too, because it sounds like you were able to come to a place of forgiveness with your relationship with Michael. So thank you.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he was very self-reflective. Like Nancy said, perfect imperfectness, perfect imperfectness. We
Yes.
all
Yeah.
have that.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Well, thank you. And I think Margaret wanted to talk, so I'm going to go ahead and unmute your mic. Margaret, are you there?
I am here. Wait.
There you go.
Okay. You're going to see my messy place. I just now got in. I was listening to this magnificent memorial while I was out and about feeding my pigeon flocks.
Oh,
Nancy, I just have to start by saying how truly, truly wonderful that was. I was so moved by everything that you shared. And though I was not privileged to know Michael, I did feel like such a kindred connection with him, such a very strong connection. And Thomas, I'd like to say before I forget that I just love your film, A Prayer for Compassion. I was fortunate to be able to go to the world premiere of that this past year with other vegans. And what that was just so wonderful, and I've told so many people about it, and it influenced me in quite a lot of ways. I mean, one was it emboldened me in my church, my former church, I should say. I was a member of an Episcopal church here in Manhattan, and I left that church because I was given a list of 12 vegan-related words that I was not to say on church grounds, or I would be escorted off the church premises. And I had been a member there for close to 40 years. So this was, quite a big thing. And it wasn't even that I was saying anything, all that heavy-handed, really. I would just say things like, well, is it really necessary for the church to have dairy products at the receptions that we have? I mean, really. And I would tell a bit about what goes on in the dairy industry and things like that. It was enough to prompt them to say, you're not allowed to say vegan-related words in this church anymore. And so I left that church and I went to another church where my reception with my vegan hats and everything is more warmly received, but nevertheless quite rejected. I'm terribly disappointed in the Christian church and really just hanging on by a thread with them. So Michael, I feel like I would have had quite a lot to share with Michael. And as Nancy was speaking about his life, I just said, yes, 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 I love this man. I love this man. I love this man. And I'm sorry I did not get to know him, but I feel very blessed just hearing about him through Nancy and all of you. And thank you so much, Nancy, for inviting me to join you today and be with all of you. And I did see the flickers of light all around you, Nancy.
Hey.
Very, very, very much so. There's no doubt that Michael was in on this,
Yeah.
for sure. So very wonderful.
Unbelievable.
well, thank you, Margaret, for
Thank you.
sharing your thoughts. And just so you know, if you're interested in getting any resources to approach your place of worship about veganism, one of the things that our Interfaith Vegan Coalition does is put together resources so it's a lot easier. We have tools and things. And Thomas, his film is one of those tools. So you can definitely reach out to either myself or Thomas for any help.
Recently, I'm glad you mentioned that, and I do want to get all of those links. Maybe Nancy will give them to me. But I just recently got myself into a little bit of hot water with a fellow Christian at my new church. And I said, in speaking about the dairy at the social hours and stuff like this, I said, well, Jesus was vegan. Jesus was vegan. and that, of course, raised a lot of eyebrows. And I said, you really ought to see this movie, A Prayer for Compassion, and you really ought to read this book, Why Every Christian Should Be a Vegan and Every Vegan Should Be a Christian, by, I think, Hicks was his name. And yes, there are just so many great resources out there. Thank you. I'm definitely going to look into all that you offer, because unlike Michael, I'm getting better, I think, at being a good vegan voice, but I know that I have maybe alienated some folks for sure. I'm sure I have. with it. But on the other hand, there have been people who have said, you were right. I thank you. I brought some into the fold, but it's a journey finding your voice. But everything that you said, Nancy, speaking about Michael, I just really touched me so much. And thank you. I mean, it was extraordinary. What an extraordinary person. And though I did not know Michael, I do feel it's very important to honor our fellow vegans and our fellow vegan activists. And it was important to me to be here, even though there was another event happening at the very same time. It was veganism in Hinduism. I was very interested, but how it is. Two things always come up at the same time, even though here we are all in COVID-19 isolation with all these hours available to us, right? But still, these two great things happening at once. But I chose Michael. I felt it was very important to be present for Nancy's memorial to him, and I thank you all very much.
Well, thank you for making that choice and helping us create this sacred space for Michael. And if you are interested in getting the replay, you can reach out to Victoria Moran, who
She
hosted
told
that.
me that she is going to make it available after. Yeah.
Good. So I think I just want to offer, if anyone else who's joined us would like to make a comment.
I would like to share a slideshow of photos that I have.
Okay, sure.
So that's Michael's ID. This is Michael and Marilyn at Tent City. And Michael playing the piano. There was a piano at Tent City. And by the way, lots of people came and visited. News people and reporters from Japan and all over the world. And Gary Null, just about anyone you could imagine. He spread the message pretty broadly there as well. Feeding the chickens. They had a pigeon. Guinea pig. I just want to also honor Marilyn, who's really helped me through this period. We've been in communication, and she's really quite a person herself. She wishes to remain invisible in this, and I honor that. This is when I interviewed Michael and Marilyn in September. This is a passion flower that bloomed the day Michael died. Oh my God. Which happened to be April 18th. And knowing Michael and how in touch he is with numbers, and 18 is like the sacred number in the Kabbalah, I thought that was pretty significant. Marilyn is an incredible artist. And so this is a picture of some of the birds that they've come to know and hang around her place. And when Michael was in the hospital, and it was just a real seesaw for us, and we really, one day we'd get a message, oh, his blood work is good and he'll go home sometime. And we just got one message of hope one day, and then the next, his lungs collapsed and he's been intubated and a ventilator, and we don't know if he can get off. During that time, Marilyn was drawing, and this is one of Michael with the birds on his arms and shoulders, like going someplace. And Marilyn told me that Michael loved orange butterflies, and several times he told me also they would just land on him and just hang out there for like half an hour, and I would just hang out with him. Those are just some photos. So thank you. Just wanted to share them. I really am thankful to have all of you with me to share this and to honor Michael. I vowed to myself that somehow, like Thomas, all that his work will continue on in one way or another.
That's beautiful. Yes, thank you so much. We're also very grateful to have all of you as part of this memorial. I wanted to also mention Judy apologized. She really wanted to be here today. Judy Carmen, there was an accident in her family, so she had to tend to that. She also brings her prayers and her thoughts for Michael. And if anybody wants to find out about the Interfaith Vegan Coalition, you can actually go to interfaithvegancoalition.org. There's some resources there for the type of activism that Michael was engaged in. Thank you to Marilyn, who's also with us, and to April, and also, I believe, Pastor Rob. So thank you to all of you who spent some time with us today to honor this very special being who had this wonderful connection to animals and also a beautiful way of expressing it to others and enlightening people about compassion for animals. I want to offer blessings that his work does continue through all of us and through other people that he's touched. And thank you, Nancy, for putting all this together and so we could see these wonderful images that were of Michael and represented Michael. And it's really been a treat to be together.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for hosting this and offering the space to do it.
Oh, well, it's my pleasure to help create that sacred space to honor an activist who really shared his heart and soul with the world and uplifted our entire community. I think with that, we'll go ahead and end our memorial, and we'll just keep that beautiful feeling of Michael in our hearts, and hopefully everyone here can stay connected.
Good.
Enjoy the rest of your days.
You too.
Take care. Many blessings.
Nancy.
Yeah.
Everybody.
He wasn't probably vegan, he was vegan. Not to be too pushy, but he was vegan. Well, Jesus was a vegan, my friend Michael told me so. He knew the Bible front and back, and he'd read the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the biggest dream he had in life was for everyone to know that Jesus was a vegan, my friend Michael told me so. Well, Michael was a gentleman who wore his heart upon his sleeve. He preached of love and kindness and wanted everyone to see that Jesus was a vegan. That's why he's called the Prince of Peace. And now that Michael's joined the Prince, it's up to us to sing. Well, Jesus was a vegan, my friend Michael told me so. He knew the Bible front and back, and he'd read the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the biggest dream he had in life was for everyone to know that Jesus was a vegan, my friend Michael told me so. Yeah, Jesus was a vegan, my friend Michael told me so. The revelation of St. John the Divine, which closes out the Bible, literally says in chapter 22 that the nations shall be healed eating from the tree of life. So going right back to the beginning, right back to the vegan commandment from the outset of the Bible. According to their very own Bible, it said the animals were created as living souls. So I went to the library and looked it up, and it said Nefesh Chaim. So then I went around Lakewood and asked all the Hasidic Orthodox Jews what Nefesh Chaim meant. And they all were saying living souls. If you look at the word Nefesh Chaim, the word animal comes from that, animus. That's why you have etymologically, animal is life, soul, spirit, mind, from the Hebrew. So it is living soul. So by eating animals, we're proverbial cannibals. We're eating living souls. They can cop their way out of it and say they don't have souls, but that's not what their own Bible says. You can ultimately use the Bible to prove vegetarianism and prove veganism. And then on top of it, that's what Jesus was about, bringing about the vegan reformation. There are key phrases that are really, really important. And it's interesting that there's a parallel between Proverbs 23:20 and Matthew 23:27. And Proverbs 23:20 says, "Be not amongst the wine bibbers and the riotous eaters of flesh." And it's also interesting about the way the different versions try and change it and attenuate. They try and make it not as direct. But that's the KJV, the King James Version. Be not amongst the wine bibbers and the riotous eaters of flesh. And wine bibbers just means drinking. So it's a prohibition against alcohol and meat products. That's the Nazarene vow. And Christ was a Nazarene. So in Matthew 23:27, he chastises them and says, you look nice on the outside, like you're doing all this ritualistic spiritual stuff, but you're eating flesh on the inside. So that's a direct parallel, which is pretty impressive. I like the numbers, Matthew 23:27. The interesting thing is that you got to go through the different translations, because you get sepulchres, you get sarcophagus, and if you look around enough and do enough research, you see that the Syriac Aramaic version, which is the original one, because Aramaic is what Christ spoke, says, you are flesh eaters.
Has his message been lost and obscured over the past 2,000 years? James, the brother of Jesus and leader of the early Jewish Christian church, was a vegetarian. In fact, in ecclesiastical history, Eusebius states that James was even raised by his parents as a vegetarian. Now why would his parents do this unless they were vegetarians and raised their entire family, including Jesus, vegetarian as well? There were many vegetarian sects living at that time, as well as in early Christianity. Augustine was a Christian who was an opposer of vegetarianism and Christianity itself. He stated that the vegetarian Christians whom he opposed were so prevalent he couldn't even begin to number them. The early Christian community we read about in Acts chapter 4 was known as the Ebionites, which is a Hebrew word for the poor. They were the Jewish Christian group that Jesus' brother James was the leader of. Ebionite writings disclose that God did not want animals killed at all. It even went so far as to condemn those who even taste meat. These Jewish Christians believed that God never gave Moses any commands to sacrifice animals or even for war. These were actually later additions. Jesus, in the biblical record, is certainly made out to be extremely opposed to the practice of animal sacrifice. We read in Matthew 21:12-13 that Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple, and he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, "It is written, My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers." Jesus was referencing Jeremiah 7:11, which states, "Has this house, which is called by my name, became a den of robbers in your eyes?" Jesus is referencing how Jeremiah tells us that God never made a command about sacrificing animals. The people were doing evil. They were shedding innocent blood. And to think, most people claim that Jesus was only mad that the people were making money off the animals for sacrifice. But in context, this was not the reality. Rather, this was an act of animal liberation. Jesus felt mercy and compassion toward his fellow living beings and could not stand the injustice going on. This cost Jesus his life. He disrupted the animal sacrificial business during such an important week, that of Passover, which resulted in him being tried and crucified by the Romans for sedition. So, ask yourself why such an enlightened man like Jesus would forfeit his life to prevent animals from being murdered. Has his message been lost and obscured over the past 2,000 years?